this Copper Belt province brings to you The Lens, a program designed to bring insightful information on economics, mining, education, health, tourism, agriculture, environmental issues, sports, entertainment, current affairs, and many issues affecting the well-being of society.
Welcome to The Lens from Luanshya Copper Belt Studios. We are broadcasting to you live from Ndola, but we are zooming into Luanshya town, which has been a mining town since the early 1920s. And of course, over the years, we've seen so much happen in Luanshya. For instance, 1959, Queen Mother visiting Luanshya Copper Mines. I'll show you a clip of that slightly later. But we will also look at Luanshya Copper Mines, like I said, then and now. Early growth, challenges faced by Luanshya Copper Mines over the decades, not forgetting influence of fluctuating copper prices on the sector's stability. And of course, we will look at the transitions from the different governments, from MMD, PF, and now UPND. Where are we? And of course, you cannot talk about copper or the economy without looking at how the kwacha has been performing, depending on how copper production has been over the years. So we will also look at that, and of course an overview of UPND's commitments to revamping the mining part of economic recovery, which have touched dewatering of 28 shafts and other incentives aimed at expanding production, and many others, and not forgetting the most important of all, the corporate social responsibility CSR initiatives by Luanshya Copper Mines. So I'll be talking to Mr. Sidney Chilea, who is the public relations manager for Luanshya Copper Mines. Well, I will not forget on my promise of showing you something. And remember, this screen has been sponsored to you by Mate Technologies, who are at shop number 9 Rikers Mall right here in Ndola. So if you want a screen like this for presentations in your office, you can pay them a visit and get one of these. It will make life much easier for you. Now, there's the Queen Mother. That's the year 1959. She was underground at Luanshya's Copper Mines in the 1950s, 1959 precisely, just having a tour of the underground facility. Now, the Queen Mother happened to be the mother to Queen Elizabeth II. So this was one of the royal tours to Luanshya Copper Mines. You can see the explosives there. I'm not too sure if they still do this. We'll ask Mr. Chilea slightly later on how mining is done now. There's been a lot of modernization over the years. And yeah, fast forwarding a bit to take us through to, well, that's way too fast. I wanted us to go somewhere there. Right, Dr. Kenneth Kaunda as well, officially opening Luanshya Civic Center and also visiting Luanshya Copper Mines. This is what we are talking about when Zambia and the Zambian kwacha was trading against the US dollar for really low rates at a time when the kwacha to dollar was 1 kwacha, and then taking you down to 2011 when we see that the Zambian kwacha was around 10 kwacha to the United States dollar, and to today. Now we want to understand what has happened over the years, especially when we look at copper prices, the economic situation, and what has been affecting Zambia's performance. And like I said, well, let's fast forward it a bit. Yes, that's Luanshya today. This is how Luanshya is looking like today. And what's going on now? Expansion projects going on. This is one of the shafts that's dewatering the underground tunnels, the ones that you saw earlier. So they've not been used for so many years, and over the years we've had water pile up all those tunnels and stuff. Mr. Chilea will give us more details on that. I'm not an expert, but that's the dewatering. So they're pumping water out of that. There's 3 pumps here that are pumping water, and you will see that this water is getting back into the Kafue River. So this is basically what's going on. Now, you will be asking, how does this affect the economy? How does this affect the livelihoods of people in Luanshya? That's what we are here to talk about. This is the lens. Now, let me officially walk to this other side as I join my guest, Mr. Chilea. Great having you. Good to see you, and welcome to our studios right here. And basically, how did you leave Luanshya?
Luanshya is fine. The weather is fine. The skies look promising. So basically, we are fine.
Indeed. Yeah. Now, Mr. Chilea, I mean, we've taken you back to the 1950s when the mine was beginning. I'm looking at some of these. Look at that picture there. You've got some of those old structures that were probably erected back then in the day. Perhaps let's start off by giving a brief background about Luanshya Copper Mines and just a quick understanding of what's going on, because many have been wondering, what's this dewatering we are hearing about? How does this benefit me as a Zambian? So let's kick off from there.
Well, thank you very much, Curtis. Like I said, I'm glad to be here. It's a pleasure to be in your studios. Luanshya has a rich history. We may need, I think, to reconcile our history more, because mining, like you have rightfully said in your intro, started in the early 1920s. We've got a very interesting story. Around the area we are mining from now, there lived a hunter called William Collier. History tells us he was hunting. He shot an antelope. That was in 1902. The animal didn't die there and then. I think he was following the drops of blood. Later on, where the animal rested, he went to pick the carcass. And he noticed some shiny stones, which he picked. Mind you, this was a hunter. So, he didn't know anything about rocks. So he basically picked the rocks as a souvenir to keep in his home, which he did. And then the story that we have is that when some of his family members were visiting him from Europe, they actually noticed the stones in his living room. And they asked him, what are these stones? He says, look, these are souvenirs. I picked them from one of my hunting sprees. And then, yeah. So they told him this looks like copper. Took the samples back to Europe. Later on, subjected the stones to some tests, and it was confirmed that actually was copper. And then they started later on, I think in 1915, 1916, mining at a very small scale. But the scanty history we have is that it wasn't up until between 1923 and 1929 that serious mining began in Luanshya. And this is why, people have asked why almost everything in Luanshya is affectionately named after some antelope. We've got antelope milling, the Ron Antelope Secondary School. Even the mine itself was at some point known as the Ron Antelope Mining Corporation, RAMCOS. So that's the connection between the antelope and mining in Luanshya. And of course, there was the Ron Selection Trust, which began mining under, I think, the Anglo-American group. The mine then was, remember, I think, nationalized by the government shortly after independence. Excuse me, up until 1991. I think the MMD government came in, and 1997 the mine was privatized. Again, records will show Luanshya mine division under the ZCCM group was the first copper mine to be privatized in 1997. It was sold to the Binani Group from India, which ran the mine from 1997 up to somewhere around 2000.
Right.
The mine went into receivership because I think there was little investment between 97 and 1999. Right. Yeah, so it went into receivership. I think the fashion in which the Binani Group exited the mine left the mine with a lot of challenges. We were, I think you and I were relatively old enough that time to recollect our history, that it took President Mwanawasa then roughly about 4 years to balance the books of the mine and then get a buyer in J&W in 2004. J&W bought the mine June 2004, ran it up to January 2009, decided to pack and leave again, owing to the economic downturn of 2008.
2008 and the
copper
prices.
Yeah, you remember that the copper prices, I think, dropped drastically to a record of around $3,000 per ton then.
Right.
2009, by then we had President Rupiah Banda. I think did negotiate a deal with, remember they came in as J&W in 2004 but exited as Enya Holdings in 2009.
Right.
And offloaded their share because they had wanted to place the mine under care and maintenance. The government didn't want that, especially that the care and maintenance didn't have a time frame. And looking at what Luanshya had gone through after the exit of Binani, the government then decided it wasn't a good idea to place the mine on care and maintenance indefinitely, for that matter. So Enya Holdings sold shares to the CNMC Group, China Non-Ferrous Metal Mining Corporation, in 2009. So those are the current owners of the mine, and the longest serving private owner now since privatization. You know that Binani, it was roughly 3 to 4 years.
Right.
The J&W, later on as Enya Group, just 4 years. And then CNMC now from 2009, June, to date. So basically that's the scanty history of the mine. Yeah.
Now, Mr. Chilea, you know, Luanshya Copper Mines has been a significant player in the mining aspect for this country. Now, let's look at, you know, some of the factors that have led to disturbances. You've highlighted different players that have come in after privatization. How have the production levels been, and where are we?
Well, I hope I can put this into context.
Right.
I've been with the mine for 16 years now, and I can tell you that the major factor that contributed to instability in this particular mine was lack of investment.
Right.
ZCCM had units, if you remember. There was in Changa, there was Mufurila, there was in Kana, there was Konkola, and whatnot. And government then decided to sell these as units, and not just as one, but as entities. And the history that we have available is that the first unit ZCCM was advised to sell was the Luanshya division. One, it had obsolete equipment. Most of it was actually installed in the 1940s and 1950s. So you got to a time when equipment outlived its usefulness.
Right.
And it becomes a drawback on the investment. So for starters, you need an investor that was going to bring in huge capital in the mine to revitalize the asset. Because mining is just like another business. You need to upgrade your equipment in order for you to run efficiently. So the biggest challenge with Luanshya mine had been old infrastructure and old equipment. And therefore, you needed an investor that was going to come in and invest quite some substantial amount of resource in order to upgrade the infrastructure and to make the mine viable. So that had been the challenge. If you look at the Binani Group 1997, there was a lot of promise that the actual investment in the mine wasn't there. And you look at J&W, later on exiting as Enya Holdings,
Right.
didn't really bring in investment. In fact, you realize that the current shafts that are being dewatered were actually decommissioned under the J&W group.
Right.
And the people of Luanshya realized that you need an investor that's going to come in with a long-term plan to invest in the mine, stabilize the operation, and also stabilize production. So basically that had been the major challenge.
Now, you've highlighted the aspect of dewatering. Earlier this year, President Hakainde Hichilema came through to Luanshya Copper Mines because you've started the process of dewatering some of decommissioned shafts. Maybe explain to us, give us an understanding of what's at these shafts. What are we going to expect tonnage-wise with regards production once you begin production?
Thank you so much, Curtis. That is a great question. I think let me give a bit of background so that we get the context to this.
Right.
We have pronounced so much 28 shafts. In essence, we've got 4 other shafts that are connected, excuse me, to this 28 shaft. We've got 14 shaft, we've got 18 shaft, 20 shaft, and the Muriashi shafts. Now, all these shafts are connected to 28 shaft, and actually, if you go back in the days during the ZCCM times, miners would actually go down 14 shaft and come out from 28 shaft. This is a span of about 5 to 6 kilometers. So it's one channel with a lot of tunnels in there. Now, this is a project that is huge capital intensive. Capital intensive in that there is copper that remained there. The time the shaft was being decommissioned, the numbers were quite scanty. So you needed to re-explore the ore body to clearly understand what is in there. And we are privileged to have a president with a lot of business experience. When President Hakainde Hichilema was in the opposition, he did promise the people of Luanshya that he was going to take it personal in ensuring that 28 shaft is reopened. And I think the people trusted the president with that kind of information because what he brought out was basically what no other politician had brought out in terms of what was sitting in that mine. And the fact that the president did indicate that this is a project that will need president-to-president engagement. And fast forward, when the president won the election in August 2021, he began to engage management. And 2023, the president did visit Luanshya to inform us that he was traveling to China in September to meet his counterpart, President Xi Jinping, to sort of attend to the intricacies around the reopening of 28 shaft. And true to his word, the president traveled to China, and people may not know this, but on that agenda, remember he had an engagement with President Xi Jinping in China. Top on that agenda was his engagement with Xi Jinping, specifically over 28 shaft. Now, this is a project that required roughly $500 million in order to be undertaken. And what we saw was that 11 days after the president returned from China, we were privileged to receive the chairman of the CNMC group, who actually told us that following the engagements President Hichilema had with President Xi Jinping, he had been sent now as an envoy to come and look at what will be required in the interim to do a feasibility study, in understanding the information that was required and a bit more detail as regarding the project. So to appreciate the effort that was put in by the president, you need to realize and understand that this is a project that had been tried by previous governments. I think that President Mwanawasa was the first one to have a shot at this. I think he had been making plans to travel to China. Unfortunately, he didn't see the fruition of his second term. May his soul rest in peace.
Right.
President Rupia Banda had started making arrangements. You and I know he was only in office for 3 years. Came President Sata, may his soul rest in peace. He had been making plans. President Lungu had a shot. I think it couldn't work. And then President Hakainde Hichilema, then in the opposition, had been making consistent promises to the people of Luanshya that he was going to ensure that 28 shaft is reopened. Why the promise? The people of Luanshya know that this is a project that comes with 3,000 employment opportunities. That is 1,500 direct jobs, 1,500 contractual jobs. And for Luanshya, that is quite massive. Because if you look at where the town is coming from post-privatization, the town had really been depressed economically. If you want to give a bad example about a ghost town, you could pick off Luanshya with your eyes closed to say, this town is as dead as Luanshya. And the only way to revive the town was to bring on board a project such as this one. Now, why so much focus on this project? I've talked about the jobs. But then this is a project that comes with a minimum of 20 years in terms of lifespan. Now, 20 years may not sound too long in mining. Right. But then in mining, when we are giving a lifespan, we are always giving the barest minimum. We don't go for the maximum. Baluba mine, which you are all aware of, was opened in 1973 with a lifespan of 30 years, meaning it should have closed in 2003. But it went all the way up to 2023. 20 years extra. 50 instead of 20 years. So you are always going for the minimum. So 28 shaft once reopened. By the way, there are other explorations that are going on around that resource. So we could see that 20-year figure change. And then this is good news for the people of Luanshya. Because this town was yearning and crying for this kind of investment. We are not a big town like you have here, Ketis. Luanshya is relatively a smaller town.
Right.
We are a very small and peaceful town. So for us, bringing on board 3,000 jobs is quite massive. Yeah.
Right. So the dewatering has started. A question you've not touched is basically with regards the dewatering. Let's put it simpler for my grandma in Shangombo watching, or in Kalumbila wondering, what's this dewatering? Especially our friends in Northwest that have a number of open pit mines might not understand what this dewatering is all about.
Well, when we talk about dewatering, we are basically pumping out the water from the 4 shafts that I've mentioned in order to make the copper that is underground there accessible. Now, why take out water? It's very simple. You can't mine in a waterlogged area. It's the practice and standard world over. You need to dewater, especially when you are dealing with an underground mine. For a simple reason. If you look at our colleagues who are mining oxides, they always go for open pit mining because oxide caps by nature are very close to the surface. You don't need to sink a shaft. All you need is to do an open pit and you access your copper. But we are dealing with a sulfide ore body here, which is very deep in the ground. This mine was decommissioned and flooded in 2001. Actually flooded in 2001, decommissioned in 2004. So there is basically there was 170 million cubic meters of water sitting in that channel. Most of that water is not surface water. It's water that has accumulated as a result of the aquifers recharging from underground. So it's basically like, for argument's sake, your borehole water. That's what we have there. Now we've got a challenge to pump out that water in order for us to re-equip this underground mine and then access the copper and mine it out. We've done roughly about, as at this morning when I was checking the figures, cumulatively we've pumped out 29 million cubic meters of water from that channel. And I'm glad that so far all the indications we have are pointing us to the fact that we may pump out this water ahead of schedule.
Okay.
Remember when we did the figures, looking at the number of pumps that we have, the capacity of the pumps, we had given ourselves between 18 to 21 months. But looking at how much we have taken out so far with the current pumps, because we still have 4 pumps that are in transit. They should be in by the end of this month. We install them, I think, early December. The indications with those pumps coming on board are that we may not get to 18 months in terms of dewatering, which is really good news because it means that our project will be ahead of schedule. So the idea really is to pump out all the water that is sitting in that channel and then begin to re-equip the mine. Now this is not a new underground mine. It was an operational mine which was flooded and then decommissioned. So most of the haulages, the working areas, the stops are all there, except it's just a hole in the ground. Because whatever infrastructure was there, remember, this is like 23 years ago, 22 years ago. So most of the infrastructure is gone. The pump chambers are not there. The support system is not there. The winding plant is gone. The hoisting system is not there. It's a hole in the ground. So once you pump out all the water from that channel, you need to begin to re-equip before the actual mining can start.
Wow. Now, you've highlighted the fact that you're ahead of schedule. What projections are you making with regards having to equip? And yes, the good news, the people are waiting for employment to begin works at the mines.
Well, I'm glad here to actually inform you that, like we did promise, because for us, everything begins with dewatering. So currently, we've got a skeleton staff to handle just the dewatering process. So if you talk about the 3,000 that I mentioned, we are not sitting at 0. We are already at 80. And as the pumping goes on, we bring in more pumps. We begin to bring in more infrastructure. You see that 80 move to about 100, 120, 150, 200. And then 3,000 is the optimum at full production, and we are going to get there.
Right, right. Now, for the people of Luanshya and Zambia at large, what outcomes can they expect once these processes are complete? Production-wise, you know, His Excellency the President has set a target of 3 million metric tons of copper. how much are you projecting short term, first of all, once production begins, and thereafter long term as Luanshya Copper Mines, in adding up to the 3 million metric tons?
Thank you very much. And I think this is what is so exciting to us as a mine. Excuse me. You realize, Curtis, that mining is a marathon. It's not really a sprint. It's long term. When you put in your investment today, you expect to begin to recoup between 7 and 12 years. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, that's how it works, mm-hmm. and there are no two ways about it. Mm-hmm. Now, currently, we are producing about 42,000 metric tons of finished copper cathode per annum. Mm-hmm. That is our production. Mm-hmm. And how do we feed into the 3 million tons mm-hmm. government has announced in the next 10 years? Mm-hmm. Now, remember, this 3 million is not next year, it's not in 3 years. Mm-hmm. It's us reaching 3 million tons by 2031, thereabout. We are currently doing 43,000 metric tons per annum. Mm-hmm. Now, with this project of 28 shaft on board, mm-hmm. we are actually doubling that. Mm-hmm. And that is how we feed into that 3 million. Mm-hmm. Now, we need to, I think, be frank with ourselves when we are having these conversations. Mining is coming from a very depressed and challenging period. Mm-hmm. I think in the last, I think if you look at between 2011 and 2021. Mm-hmm. Now, you understand that you had big mining companies that were facing challenges, mm-hmm. and as CNMC Luanshya Copper Mines, mm-hmm. we are very pleased with the policy mm-hmm. direction this new government is actually pointing us to. Mm-hmm. Now, why do I say so? Mining is not an isolated venture. Okay, it's dependent on really what happens elsewhere. I'll give you an example. You can't do 3 million tons with our current installed capacity in terms of power. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. And if you look at the pronouncements this government has been making, mm-hmm. there's an interconnectivity of some sort. We have seen investment in power generation. Mm-hmm. And in this case, we've seen a shift from hydro. Mm-hmm. Because if you look at the past regimes, most of the investment was concentrated on hydro. Mm-hmm. Now, we have all seen what hydro can do. Mm-hmm. When the weather catches a small cold, we all get the fever or the flu. Mm-hmm. We are coming from one of our worst droughts we've had as a country. Mm-hmm. And because most of our investment in power and energy was concentrated in hydro, mm-hmm. we have a huge challenge mm-hmm. as a nation. Mm-hmm. And we are glad that this government is beginning to diversify, mm-hmm. because you need energy mm-hmm. for you to get to that 3 million tons. Mm-hmm. You need proper infrastructure in terms of road, for example, and we are glad that we have seen quite some substantial amount of investment mm-hmm. in our road infrastructure. Mm-hmm. Now, we may not really appreciate this connectivity, but there's a huge connection between infrastructure, and in this case road infrastructure, vis-a-vis trade and the rate at which you can bring in your consumables mm-hmm. in order for you to run your mine. Mm-hmm. So these things are somehow interconnected, and we are glad. Because when you make a pronouncement, you are setting yourself a target. Mm-hmm. It's basically a target for you to aim at. But you need to look at other ventures for you to aim and finally shoot at that target. Mm-hmm. So the government didn't just say we are aiming at 3 million tons of copper by 2031 mm-hmm. and then sit back and fold mm-hmm. Their arms. No. you look at what other ventures are needed in order to support that ambition. And we are glad that there is quite some substantial amount of investment in power generation projects, solar projects by CEC and other private producers. The investment in the second phase of the construction of the thermal plant at Mamba Collieries, especially for us, that is 300 megawatts.
Right.
That is quite huge.
Indeed.
Mind you, if we are producing 43,000 metric tons per annum currently, and we are aiming at producing roughly 90,000 metric tons in the next 3 to 4 years,
Right.
that you are not just doubling your production. You need to double your energy requirement for you to produce that 90,000 metric tons. And we are glad that at the time 28 shaft will be in full production, we are going to have a corresponding coming on board in terms of energy as a country. And it's a huge relief for us as Luanshya Mine to have a government that is so focused and so forthright in terms of what really the government is investing in to support this projection.
Well, now, with all that said, social corporate responsibility, Ron United, one of them among many others. How is it looking?
You've put me on the spot there, and I think I'll follow that. You've started rightly with Ron United, and I'll start from there. Remember that when CNMC took over Luanshya Mine, the focus was to invest in production, increase production, stabilize production, and then all of us can have revenue to invest in corporate social responsibility. I'm glad to inform you that just 2 weeks ago, we kick-started the first phase of the rehabilitation of Kafubu Stadium. Ron United is one of the biggest football clubs we have in this country. It's got a rich history. It won the inaugural Super League in Zambia. So of late, the club hasn't been doing very well, and we've got a long-term plan as a company, and part of that long-term plan is to look at the infrastructure of the club. We have Kafubu Stadium as the home for our football team. We just commenced our rehabilitation of that stadium just about a couple of weeks ago. It's a 3-phase approach. The first phase is looking at one section of the infrastructure, the second phase, and then the third phase. We are hoping that in the next two years or so, we should have a stadium that is befitting a club of the magnitude of Ron United. And our ultimate goal is to bring back this club back into the Super League and have the club compete at the highest level. You may wish to know also that as a company, we decided that we have to shift our corporate social responsibility. Shift in the sense that if you look at where we are coming from in terms of ZCCM and Ron Selection Trust, we are focusing on investing in projects that are going to outlive mining itself. And I'll demonstrate this. The president came to Luanshya in May this year to commission our new technical college. Now, CSR must be tied to the community and also the operation itself. Now, this is a technical college that is offering state-of-the-art equipment in terms of training. Now, you may wish to know that as an industry, we've been having these back and forth engagements with our technical training institutions in this country. It's a challenge that you have, I think, even at the national level. Most of our training institutions are way behind of the industry. I'll give you an example. If you go to any technical college today, look at the courses they're offering. I was surprised when I visited one of the training institutions, and found them training young men and young women who were undergoing training as mechanics, you know. They were doing their practicals on a car engine from, I think, 1973. Okay, and for us, that's quite a misnomer, because you can't teach a secretary how to type using a typewriter when there are no typewriters anymore in the industry. So we decided as a company that we need to move ahead of time. Construct, equip, and commission a technical college that will be answering to the needs that are in the industry. Now, this was done at a cost of about $3.9 million. Now, remember that when we dewater 28 shaft, this mine is not coming with equipment from the 1950s. It's state-of-the-art equipment. And you will need people trained with modern equipment in order to run this mine.
Right.
So this is not a college that is exclusive to the mine. It's a highly subsidized college that is open even to the members of the public out there, with bursaries also to cater for the underprivileged. Now, this also has a connection. I told you earlier about how you can gauge a government that is focused and planning way ahead of schedule. We've employed recently some of the students who are graduates from the CDF side of government. Now, you've got a component within the CDF that sponsors technical tertiary education.
That's right.
And for government to announce 3 million tons of copper production by 2031, and also beginning to equip young women and men with skills, for us, this is an excellent move. Like I said, when you announce 3 million tons, you need the power, you need the energy to achieve that. You need the road and other infrastructure. You need the skills.
That's right.
And government is not leaving these challenges to the industry to sort out. Government is also, and we are grateful, because it's like, you know, the government training on your behalf.
Right.
We've got a very good story. There's a young lady, you know, these big dump trucks that you have,
right,
predominantly driven, operated by men. There's a young lady who went under CDF to train. I think she's doing now her industrial placement with us. Excellent young lady. Trained under the CDF component. She's operating a dump truck. And this is the connection that we want to appreciate.
Wow, yeah. Wow. Inspiring stories, and well, thank you so much for coming through, and of course for the impact that you are making into the lives of different people. It's not just Luanshya, you know. People are coming in from Ndola, other parts of the Republic of Zambia, you know, just to ensure that they can add on to the development of this country.
Thank you so much. I wish to mention also that if you look at the past 2 years, Luanshya has been a hive of activity. A lot of businesses focusing on Luanshya now, because the 28 shaft dewatering project is a $500 million project, and we are glad that we are also seeing, you know, small business enterprises, the SMEs, coming up. We are setting aside a certain portion of that amount to ensure that that which we can source locally, as a company, we use our small businesses. It's one way of us also growing the economy of Luanshya. It's cheaper and more effective for us, but we've also begun engagements with the Luanshya Chamber of Commerce and Industry to ensure that we capacity grow our SMEs for them to tap into that $500 million and the subsequent fruits of that once production commences.
Indeed. Well, for all those of you watching, this has been the lens from Zanis Copper Belt Studios. We were zooming into Luanshya, where Mr. Sidney Chilea, the Public Relations Manager for Luanshya Copper Mines, has given us an in-depth look at what's going on, the expansion projects that Luanshya Copper Mines is currently undertaking, from the dewatering, which will see the company increase its production capacity, and which in turn will also add up. Remember, I mentioned the exchange rate, which today is at 27 kwacha, 28 ingwe against the dollar. And you're looking at projections back then. We will do a separate program with economists where we will look back at how the Zambian kwacha has performed against other major currencies, especially at times when the mines were operating at full capacity with good and attractive copper prices. We also saw that had a positive impact on the reaction of our currency against other major currencies across the globe. Now, as we end, we want to enlighten you on the fact that the current government is committed to revamping the mining sector as part of its economic recovery plan. And 3 years down the line, where we are beginning to see encouraging developments such as the Luanshya Copper Mines. It's not just Shaft 28, but many other shafts that all lead up to Shaft 28, as you may have heard and seen from our presentation today. And of course, this process, along with other expansion projects, holds a potential to boost Zambia's mining activity, employment, and of course, the local economy. This has been The Lens. Thank you so much for joining us. Do join us on another edition soon. And remember, this episode was brought to you with the compliments of Mate and, of course, Luanshya Copper Mines coming through just to give us an in-depth look at what's going on in Luanshya. On behalf of our entire production crew right here at Zanis Ndola, thank you so much for watching and pleasant viewing.